another Groove Growth program. Very excited to have an old friend. I mean, here I am looking at my brother over here, and we got the white hair. There was a time when we both had just dark hair. We go way back, man, way back. My man, mentor to many, etc. Very big leader, a visionary CEO, Nick Sarnicola. Brother, thank you so much for taking some time with me, man. Really appreciate it.
Grateful to be on. Grateful to be on. Thank you for calling out my gray hair. I appreciate that.
It just means we've been around and known each other a long time. That's all. I think it dates back to, multiple relationships, maybe.
Yeah. We're talking about 23 years, maybe.
Yeah. Amazing. I love that. So you've been an entrepreneur pretty much your whole life, but take us back to the beginning. How did that kick off for you?
Sure.
When did that, become, hey, this is what I got to do?
Pure accident. So I was raised in a very blue collar, middle class upbringing. All four grandparents worked at the same factory. Dad worked there, uncles worked there, brothers worked there, and I sure as hell wasn't going to work there. So I decided as a kid I wanted to be rich one day, but I can't sing, can't dance, can't rhyme, can't act, can't play an instrument, and I'm not going to do anything illegal. So the only path for me in that middle class environment was sports. So I went and played college baseball, and while I was playing college baseball, I got introduced to entrepreneurship through kind of like the lowest common denominator of direct sales networking. And the light switch went on. I was like, wait a second, you don't have to have a physical gift or a physical talent to be rich. There's ways that you can do it through just pure grit, determination, perseverance, heart, and desire. And away we went.
Yeah. And so what was the first one? What was that beginning like when you said, okay, light bulb went off.
Yeah.
Now we actually have to engage.
Again, I saw direct sales network marketing, and I drank the Kool-Aid. I was literally dumb enough to believe it was possible to build a big team. And I had no success for the first 2 years. And then I finally learned sales, and then I started to learn sales leadership. And then I started to get some mastery over sales leadership. So I was able to build a sales organization, and then, combine that with, leverage and residuals. I was able to make, 10 grand a month, and then finally 15, and then 20. And all of a sudden I'm 25 years old, and, I'm approaching making my first million. And then that company went out of business, and my business partner and I, we acquired the assets of that company to create our own.
And so tell me a little bit about this sales versus sales leadership, because
Yeah.
I know this is a topic that you're very passionate about, and that there's a real difference between sales and sales leadership. So talk to us a little bit about that, please.
Yeah, there's a huge distinction between the two. So sales is, about your ability to represent a product or service in a way that is truthful and high integrity, but also in a way that connects with the person who's listening to you, that one-on-one connection, so that they want to buy it from you and they want to do the transaction with you. And you're trying to figure out, what's their hot button, and how can I create likeness and rapport, and also how can I be an expert in the product or service that I'm representing, so any question they ask me, I know the answer. And that's sales, right? Sales leadership is about your ability to recruit, build culture, design compensation plans, create vision, understand how to lead people individually and also lead them as a group. It's about expansion. It's about what markets. It's about creating an LMS, so that everything that you create, every person you onboard has a place to go to. It's all of those functions. That's sales leadership.
And how did you come to that? In other words, how did you come from, okay, my first 2 years were tough, and then I started making sales.
Yeah.
And then I realized, wait, this is good, but not good enough to get me to where I want to be.
Early on, it was just, if I'm being truthful, it's just a function of compensation. So the compensation plan, it dictated, in order for you to exponentially grow, you needed to exponentially grow your team, right? So that's what forced the learning curve of leadership. And then from there, once I understood that the income was an exponential curve of leadership learning, I spent 10 years studying leadership. I went from how-tos. John C. Maxwell's probably the greatest how-to on leadership. It's everything of his style is how-to. And then I went to, this authority on leadership. So it might be like Martin Luther King on leadership, or Teddy Roosevelt on leadership. And then I spent the last few years reading only biographies of the entire life journey of leaders that I really enjoyed learning about, and then seeing how they applied and how they grew and what decisions they made on their journey.
And so what do you think then would be?
I mean, let's go past the obvious one, which is there has to be integrity there. Otherwise, the leadership is breached, right? So let's assume the obvious, trust and integrity. But beyond that, you're looking at vision, right? Without vision, the people will perish. You're looking at hunger and drive. I believe the leader has to be, the one with the highest motor, right? It's like, hey, I want to follow that person because they're willing to run hard, and I'm willing to run hard because they're willing to run hard. I think the ability to develop, right? So leadership is about developing other people first, developing other people to, let's say, go do X, Y, and Z. But then eventually, if you can develop other leaders, it's multiplication on top of multiplication. So I think that's kind of the top of the food chart there is, if you can be a leader who develops other leaders, you're an unstoppable force at anything you do.
It's interesting because when I did the series back when with millionaires and billionaires, and I was set up to interview these guys, a lot like Napoleon Hill did in Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
The first comment that you made about integrity's got to be there, it was the only thing that never came up in any of the conversations I had with those top producers and billionaires, because it's
a given. Yeah.
The given. If you don't get that, you're out of the game already.
Yeah.
Well, what would you recommend to the budding entrepreneur who's looking to become a leader? What would be ways they could go about that? What could they cultivate in themselves?
Yeah, I get asked this a lot. People ask me, in fact, I was on the Vic Titness show in Tampa not too long ago, and he asked me, do I believe that leadership can be taught? And I'm like, I do absolutely believe leadership can be taught. I believe leadership is a skill. I also believe clearly there's people that are better or more gifted or more suited for it. But I believe leadership is a skill set, and I think it can only be mastered through application. So it doesn't matter to me, how many books you read on the topic. I was reading books on the topic, but I was in application every day. I was trying to lead. So the short answer is you have to try to lead. You have to say, hey, follow me. Hey, this is where we're going. Hey, this is the plan, right? You have to take ownership, and you have to grab everyone's attention, and you have to put your ass out there on the line and say, this is what I believe can happen, and this is what I'm betting on, and follow me. Let's do this. And that in itself is a skill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because my good friend Les Brown lives down where you do. And I remember him answering the question, what does it take to become a great speaker? And his answer is pretty simple: 500 speeches.
Speak.
And you got to be passionate about it. Yeah. Combine those two, you're in good shape. All right. I love to ask this question. Tell us, if you can share in some kind of colossal error or setback that you experienced on your journey, and what that taught you.
I've got several colossal ones. Okay, I'm going to go with so a lot of our colossal errors, Ridgely, are actually underneath the cover of NDAs. And there's so many of them, and they're in so many directions. I sometimes like, wait, what can I talk about? What can't I talk about? But I think one colossal error absolutely would have been, we had a deal in place with a company that bought our company, and they were close relationship and close friendship. And I believe we let relationship and friendship and even to in some extent brotherhood get in the way of doing. We got taken advantage of because of the fact that we were young and naive, and they were business first and we were relationship first. And because they were business first, we got nuked and they got all the money. But they were leading with the language of relationship first while executing for themselves on business first. Mm-hmm. So that colossal error cost me $34.5 million personally. It cost us as a team of business partners $105 million. And if I could have gone back in time, I would have made the hard decision to execute the contract as opposed to pursue the relationship side of it. I would have made the tough decision to execute the contract.
And what'd you take away from that? What was the big takeaway for you?
It's really hard for me because I'm super relational, right? So even to this day, I'm very relational. I'm not, if I had the choice between a handshake deal and a contract, I'm taking the handshake deal. It's just how I operate. But what I took away from it was I have to think significantly more about the long-term ramifications of a short-term emotional relational decision.
Mm-hmm.
Because as an optimist and as a person that's like, oh, nothing can ever go wrong, and let's just go all in again and let's keep doubling down and keep doubling down. I didn't think through what would happen if we never got paid. It never crossed my mind, right? So it's like, oh yeah, we're all going to do this together. But they had taken theirs out, and we had never gotten ours out, and it never crossed my mind. I would have thought more critically of the cons. What happens if this doesn't happen? The negative side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is really worth paying attention to. It's kind of like the Stockdale paradox, right? Just think about what's the worst possible thing that can happen, be prepared for that, and then everything else is pretty easy.
Correct.
So in that sense, you've been very much a relationship guy. What do you think of the value and power of mentorship? What's it meant for you? You've been a mentor to many. You've had mentors. What's that look like?
It's interesting you're asking this because I've stumbled across a new topic that's kind of like my hot topic, which is called an impact ladder, right? And the reason why I've had a lot of trouble with this impact ladder is the up and coming marketplace explosion of influencers, experts, quote unquote thought leaders, these terms, right? So these terms, I'm like, okay, where do these fit in this world of leadership and mentorship? Because I hold in the highest regard leadership, number one, and right behind leadership is mentorship. And the distinction between leadership and mentorship is a mentor is going to meet with you twice a year. They've made it, they've won, and it's because they love you. They're gonna give you a bunch of freebies. Don't do this, do this, don't do this, do this, and they don't care if you do or don't. But they're going to tell you anyways. It's like they're not tied to you financially. They don't get paid for the advice. And that's a mentor. And a leader is tied to your result, right? They're in the trenches with you every day. And my belief is the two best things you could ever be called outside of mommy or daddy when you walked into a room is for somebody to say, that's my mentor. And then above that would be, that's my leader. Let me introduce you to Ridgely. This is my leader, right? Now you have a lot of people that say like, this is my coach. Coach is below mentor because a coach does not coach unless a coach gets a check. It doesn't mean a coach doesn't love you. It doesn't mean the coach isn't good. It doesn't mean the coach isn't passionate. It means they only show up if they get paid. And that's a business coach. That's a life coach. That's a tennis coach. That's a personal trainer. That's what a coach does. And that's what a consultant does. A mentor is showing up because they love you. But if you don't execute on what they taught you, they're out because you wasted their time. The value of a mentor is just one below, to me, the value of your leader.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That's really very, very well spoken. So talk to us about the value of ongoing personal professional development. You already talked about reading all those biographies of top leaders, but for all the budding entrepreneurs that are watching or listening, how important is it to stay on that path?
I'm gonna pull up my book I'm listening to right now. I don't think the budding ones are the issue. I think it's the ones that have made it that are the issue. But this is my current book I'm listening to right now. It's called The Gambler. And this is the best story of the entrepreneur no one ever heard of. And it's a guy who dropped out of like junior high. He's an Armenian guy that ended up owning half of Las Vegas. He owned the Flamingo, and he created the International Hotel, which was the biggest hotel at its time. And he's like, I've never heard of this guy. And his story is fascinating. But to answer your question, to the budding ones out there, I think personal and professional development, most of them, I believe, especially with access to the internet, are watching videos, they're watching podcasts, they're watching this, they're attending events. So I'm going to say to you, I'm going to say the opposite of where maybe you were leading me in the question. Don't get trapped in a personal growth, personal development hole. Personal growth, personal development, and professional development is a balance of action and education. It's take action, take action, take action, learn, take improved action, take improved action, take improved action, learn some more, take improved action. What I see happening a lot of times with the newer folks is learn. Oh, I'm sorry. And plan, learn, plan. And you can throw that shit out the window because this isn't school. So you're not getting, there's no grade or value to the notes you're taking and the plan you're creating. You're only graded on the revenue you created, and the revenue you created is only graded upon the action that you took. So I believe there's this great synergistic combination between learning and taking action. And that would be my suggestion to the budding entrepreneur out there. But I think it's the person who's had success that I think is pulling back from the education. And, I've had times in my life where I pulled back from the education, and I wasn't listening or reading a book a month at least, or, so now I have in my top 10 goals every year, I always have execute my growth plan. And my growth plan has a subset of amount of mentorship meetings, amount of events I attend, amount of podcasts I'll listen to, an amount of books that I listen to. And it's to keep me sharp and to keep me fresh because those young guys are coming.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you on that one. I don't know. I haven't told you this. Being a geek, I went back to school again, Nico, and got another master's degree in education from DePaul University in Chicago. Last December, I graduated.
Congratulations.
It was on value creating education and global citizenship. Where do the boundaries stop between countries and start? How can we learn to get along with everybody? How do we create better connectivity on the planet? It was intense, but I got to tell you, it kicked my butt into oblivion. You forget this is a master's program. It's for people who are really serious about stuff. And I was like, okay, fine. Anyway, it was a great experience. All right, I got one for you. How about this? You have a time warp, and you can jump into the time warp, and you can go back 20 years in time and speak with all the wisdom and experience and knowledge that you have today to the young Nick Sarnicola of 20 years ago.
Yeah, this is easy.
What would you want to share with them?
It's so easy. Believe it even more and go faster and go harder, quicker. Which is, with people that know me, like, I don't understand how you can even say that because you were going so insanely hard. But if I go back in time, believe more and go faster and harder, quicker, because I'm now so dead certain on compressing time frames and compounding results. I now know if I would have compressed the time frame even more and took more repetition and more repetition and more action and more action, that growth curve would have went like this instead of like this, right? And most people, their growth curves like this because they're not willing to compress time frames, and they don't realize, hey, you can do in 4 years worth of work. You could do 10 years worth of hours. A 40-hour work week, you can do that in 4 years if you're willing to compress that down to 100 hours a week. And that was probably very close to where I was at for a decade. But, I look back and I'm like, man, knowing what I know now, I would have read even more books. I would have gone even harder. I would have believed even, and who knows where I would have been by age 32. By age 32, I had made 70 million, but they forgot to give me 35 of it. I made it. I earned it. I made it. The money was in the bank. They just dividended it out to themselves and didn't pay us, right? So it was done. So that was by compressing all of my 20s. I did 30 years worth of work in 10 years. And that result then came in the next 3 years like this, boom. So I asked myself, what would that have looked like if I would have gone harder, faster, more sacrifice, more belief throughout my 20s?
Now, let me ask you a funny question. Obviously, there's the going harder, faster, quicker, but there's also what you talked about a little while ago, which is that balance between action and education. And I know, because I was part of it, blessed to be part of it, that you were very involved in learning and training and teaching. And I was taught by you and had the chance to be a part of teaching of you. And that was very cool for me.
You were not taught by me at that time. You were teaching us. That was very one way.
I'm very proud of you guys. You guys are awesome. So, but in this sense, if you had gone that much harder, do you think you could have kept up with the learning piece of the increased action? Because there is an amount of settling that goes along with that.
Yeah, because I know I can look back and I can see all the spots of time that was wasted on things I didn't need to do or shouldn't have done or just, it's like, and unless you have an insane motor, you won't relate. You're gonna be like, well, it's okay to have watched that movie and it's okay to have done this. And so, I didn't say it wasn't okay. I just said, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have done it. I would have substituted all of that time that was not towards a productivity or learning. I would or health, those three things, productivity, learning, or health. I would have not spent an ounce of time on anything except those three things, knowing what I know now. And I already was spending 100 hours a week on those three things.
Which is pretty amazing. You look back on it. And so let me ask you this one. Here's a funny question for you. You're now a dad.
Yeah.
What's that been like? What's that meant for you?
Well, I think if you were to say what's changed you the most, it was having my daughter. Having my daughter first, I think was very important than having my son first, because they're very different. And she has taught me patience more than anything has ever taught me patience. And then he has taught me patience in a different way. Her is just more of like, you just don't want to raise your voice. You didn't want to make her cry. And him, I don't want to kill him. Right. So it's different. Right. So, so I'm very happy that at 34, she was the first child and he was the second child at 37, because I needed those couple of years to start tapering down my intensity. Because, I'm a very intense person. And now I'm maybe, who knows, maybe I'm 50% of the intensity I was, maybe a lot, or maybe 2/3, I don't know. But without a doubt, it's made me a much less intense person, much more loving person, a much more empathetic person.
Yeah, for sure. It does that to you, doesn't it? Whether you like it or not, it's coming your way if you're paying
attention. Some big ones. You got some big babies.
Yeah, man, I'll tell you what, it's incredible. And you've known them since they were very small. So 3 resources, books, something that if you had to say to budding entrepreneur, they came to you or even an established entrepreneur said, look, what are give me 3 of your top 10 or whatever, what would they be that stand out for you that really had an impact?
Sure. Oh, first of all,
new ones, doesn't matter.
Anything that Ridgely does, you should dive into. So if he's doing a podcast, listen to the podcast. If he's throwing an event, show up to the event. He's doing a mastermind, plug into the mastermind. So let's put that one there, for sure. So as a huge consumer of all things growth, and I'm maybe at 10% level of what you've consumed, it's a different tool for a different place in your life, right? So it's like, the impact that blank had on me at that point in my life was so meaningful compared to this time of my life. So I got to answer that question in relativity to where I was at in life at that point.
Sure.
I've always been a huge Tony Robbins fan. Date with Destiny was probably the most impactful in-person event I've ever done. Date with Destiny is a lot more expensive now than when I took it, but that's been the most impactful event for me in person. And this topic, by the way, and this might ruffle some feathers, but me, I like to ruffle feathers. I don't listen to people who talk that haven't built something. You were a business builder first, and then you began speaking because you fell in love with the human connection. And then you began doing both, building businesses and speaking, right? So it's like, you're a highly qualified person for entrepreneurs to learn from. But then there's a lot of people out there that they just learned how to speak and they got good at speaking and they got paid and made money to speak. And it's like, and a lot of it was speaking about other people's content. And to me, I don't place value in that, right? So I place value in the guys that built something and speak about it. And those are the ones that have the most impact on me. I'd say, from a book perspective, Coming Out of the Ice, which is this random book, was my number one favorite book of all time because it's the true testament of what a person's human capacity, of how much willpower you can have. And I don't know if you remember like LimeWire. LimeWire was like an illegal download system, and like back when we were hanging out. And I came across this obscure speech by Jim Rohn. And in it, he talks about this story of this American that moves to Russia right before World War II, and he gets stuck there and da-da-da-da-da. And it's this story of this guy's life, and that's Coming Out of the Ice. And by the third time I heard the speech, I was like, I'm gonna go buy this book. Turns out you couldn't find it at a bookstore. You could only buy it used. I have now bought hundreds of copies of this used and gifted it to people. So Coming Out of the Ice, from a book perspective,
I got to get that.
Yeah. And then podcasts, I'm actually not, I'm a short former. I'm a short former, but I love Jim Rohn just like anybody else. And that's, he's more of my balance. So I'm not just always in the hardcore business entrepreneurship. I get some good balance of just thinking. He's just a great thinker. So, and I never listen to the whole podcast. I'm just grabbing the 10-minute snippets.
Mm-hmm. I love Jim. I mean, not to mention the fact that mailbox money is fun, right? I still get checks from Jim Rohn International for all his books that I did in Spanish. So yeah, no, Jim is just amazing. So as you're looking toward the future, wrapping this thing up here, as you're looking toward the future, what's your vision? What's it look like out there to you? Do you see it as an optimistic space, an amazing space, a tough space, a difficult? What's it look like from the eyes of Nick Sarnicola?
It's a great question. I only ever see things as opportunity or upside or whatever, right? So as people get down into the weeds of America, this party versus that party, and I'm just like, well, I'm just gonna do my own party. It's like, well, what happens if this? And what happens if that? Well, then I'll just educate the kids. Well, what happens if this? Well, then, okay, well, it looks like we're gonna have to find a second home somewhere that maybe becomes a first home somewhere. Like, our job is to find opportunity and to create wealth for our families, and to maximize the market conditions as they change and as they shift, et cetera. And doing it inside of high integrity and doing it inside of something that feels good to you. And so for me, I just want to build companies inside of the way that that it enthralls me or excites me. Like right up here is when you see this is my purpose, and my purpose is inside of 3 circles. It's inside of impact, joy, and revenue. So I only want to do things that make an impact, that bring me joy, and that create revenue. The dead center of those 3 things is where I'm going to stay. And I don't, if the world's coming to an end, well, then at least I'm going to do it happen. It's going to happen. I'm going to be happy. If the country's coming to an end, then I'm going to do it chasing my purpose. I'm not going to do it out of fear. I'm not going to live, in a place of, Chicken Little. Like, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree, man. And I think that's great. And I feel, by the way, exactly the same way you do. When I look out there, I'm like, wait, okay, what are the rules? Oh, okay, some rules changed. Okay, fine. What are the parameters? Where's the sandbox? Let's go play. Let's just figure it out and not worry about it. And I remember my mentor used to say that to me all the time. I don't care what those politicians are doing. I don't care what they're doing up there. Just let us know what the rules are, and we'll do what we got to do within that space and move forward.
And if you don't like it, Jim Rohn, you say, if you don't like it, go make your own country.
Exactly, right.
Which I'm down for, by the way. Like if it gets to that point, we just go make our own country, so be it.
You would say, go make your own country, right? All right. It's your call.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
can do this. Right?
the long draw,
I know exactly.
the high pitches.
Farm boy from Idaho. It's all good. All right, man. So final words to the entrepreneurs out there from Nick Sarnicola. What would you want to say to people as we're wrapping this up today? What would you want to leave them with?
I think strategically get in front of what's happening in AI. So your ability to move at speed. Oof. Entire marketing departments can be replaced right now for startup companies if they know the right questions to ask AI. It's not just about saying, hey, AI, do this. It's about matching AI and your questions you ask it to your demographic, to your product fit, to your price point. Like you're tapping into AI to do market analysis for you. You still got to do the work. You still got to deliver. You still got to execute. But I would master AI as quick as you can, or you have to be in a financial position to hire it out. So for me, I don't think I'm going to be the person that goes and masters it. I think I'm going to have a chief AI officer. I'm going to be on the front end of hiring agencies, executives, et cetera, who have mastery over that, so I can stay in my lane. But if you're not in a financial position to do that, then you have to master it. And so that you can see the benefits from that. You could save so much in costs from legal contracts, all that stuff. Okay, so that's one. That's one just really a tangible tip. The other second, tangible tip is do not reduce your dream. You can't reduce your dream. You can't reduce it for any circumstance. You can't reduce it for anybody. For whatever's happening in the current environment, you can't reduce. I call it reducing your Z. If A is where you're at and everything you want is from A to Z, you can't keep reducing your Z because then you're only getting 5% of the dream. What people do is they reduce the dream so it feels good that they're closer to what the dream is. Now, that's bullshit. You want to extend the Z as far as you can get because 10% of a billion is way better than 10% of a million. So just get 10% of the billion. Actually, let me say it again. 10% of a billion is way better than 50% of a million or 80% of a million or 100%. Oh, I'm going to reduce my Z to here. Well, congratulations, you got it. You got 100% of a million. Why didn't you just go for 10% of a billion? Right? Because that's 100 million. Mm-hmm. So never reduce your dream for anyone, anything, any circumstance, any environment.
I love that. Never reduce your dream. Do not reduce your dream. Nick, thank you so much, brother. Love you, appreciate you, and thank you so much for contributing to our community, sharing your wisdom, your journey. It has been a real blast, and I deeply, deeply appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me. I love you as always, and thank you for the continued work you do for all the entrepreneurs out there, brother.